The world has its great arteries, its vital passages, channels through which history, power, and human ambition flow in equal measure. And few, in all of recorded time, have carried as much weight as this narrow, sun-scorched corridor of water between two ancient lands. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a name that echoes through the halls of global power, a name spoken in boardrooms from London to Beijing, calculated in energy spreadsheets, tracked by satellites, debated in the chambers of the United Nations. 21 miles at its narrowest point. That is all that separates the Arabian Sea from the Persian Gulf. 21 miles through which, every single day, 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply passes, silently, ceaselessly, and largely unseen by those who depend on it most. To the world's strategists, this is a chokepoint, a flashpoint, a line on a map of immense, irreplaceable consequence. But step away from the satellites, step away from the tanker tracking screens and the geopolitical briefings, come down to the shore, because here, at the very edge of one of the world's most consequential waterways, there is a life being lived, quietly, persistently, beautifully, a life not measured in barrels, but in tides. This is the story of the people who call the Strait of Hormuz home. In the popular imagination, the Middle East is often reduced to two extremes: the gleaming towers of Dubai reaching into a cloudless sky, the ancient dust-covered ruins of Petra carved into rose-red cliffs, the hypermodern and the deeply ancient, with very little visible in between. But between those two poles, there exists another world entirely. Bandar Abbas is the dominant city of this region, the capital of Iran's Hormozgan province, a city of over 500,000 people, a bustling, ambitious industrial port where container ships are loaded around the clock and the population grows year by year. It is a city in motion, a city that wants something from the future. Travel just a few kilometers in any direction from Bandar Abbas's outskirts, however, and the transformation is total. The road narrows, the buildings shrink, the noise falls away, and you arrive, not just in a different place, but in a different conception of time entirely. Here, the city is a destination visited occasionally, for a hospital appointment, for a bureaucratic form, to buy something the village market cannot provide. But it is not home. Home is here, among the families, among the boats, among the sound of the sea at every hour of the day. On the Omani side, this contrast becomes even more pronounced. The Musandam Peninsula, technically part of Oman but geographically separated from it by the UAE, is accessible only by sea or by a single mountain road that winds through terrain of almost theatrical severity. Its isolation is its protection. Its village communities remain, as a result, among the most intact, most genuine, and most deeply rooted in the Gulf. The divide between city and village here is not merely geographic, it is philosophical. Two entirely different answers to the same ancient question: what does a good life actually look like? The single most defining feature of life in the communities of the Strait of Hormuz is not the geography, not the heat, not the constant presence of massive tankers on the horizon. It is people. More specifically, it is the way people here relate to one another. In the Western urban world, community has become something of a nostalgic abstraction, something people pursue deliberately at curated events, in neighborhood apps, in the comments sections of local social media groups. Something they know they want and can't quite find. Here, it simply is. It does not need to be pursued. It is the texture of daily life. The family unit in these coastal communities is not the nuclear structure of two parents and a few children, each orbiting in their own separate sphere. It is something far larger and far more interconnected. Grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all living within a few doors of one another or under the same roof. or in a shared compound of adjacent houses where the internal walls are more suggestion than boundary. This is not a lifestyle choice born of nostalgia or philosophy. It is a practical reality, a design solution refined over centuries by people who understood, in the most direct and lived way possible, that the challenges of this place are best met not by individual strength alone, but by collective resilience. When a fisherman's boat is damaged in a sudden storm, the village does not organize a fundraiser or submit an insurance claim. The following morning, the men simply gather. Tools appear, materials are contributed, the work is done. No one was asked, no favor was negotiated. It is simply what happens. It has always been what happens. When a family prepares for a wedding, and weddings here are not 4-hour events but celebrations that unfold over 2 or 3 full days, the community mobilizes with the warm efficiency of a well-practiced orchestra. The women gather to prepare enormous quantities of rice, fish stew, flatbread, and honey-sweet desserts. The men arrange the space. The elders take their places of ceremony. The children run beneath everyone's feet in a state of barely contained joy. Everyone has a role. No one needed to be assigned it. The concept of hospitality that anchors these communities deserves particular attention. Both the Persian and Arab cultures that meet and blend along the shores of the strait share, at their very core, an almost sacred commitment to the welcomed guest. If you enter a home here, even as an unknown stranger, even without warning, you will not leave without first sitting, without first being offered tea, without first being made to understand, unmistakably and without performance, that your arrival is a gift, not an inconvenience. That tea, hot, strong, sweet, sometimes perfumed with cardamom, or the dried black lime that is this coast's characteristic flavor, is not merely a drink. It is a language. It says, you are seen, you are welcome. You are among people who understand that every human being who walks through a door deserves to be treated as if their arrival matters. Children grow up in this world understanding, before they have words for it, that they belong to something far larger than themselves. Not a school, not a religion, not an ideology, a people. There is a moment, if you are lucky enough to witness it, when a culture stops being something you observe and becomes something you feel. Something that reaches past the intellectual distance of the traveler and speaks directly to a part of you that predates language. This is one of those moments. The cultural traditions of the Strait of Hormuz communities are not museum pieces. They are not preserved in amber, maintained by heritage committees, enacted for tourist buses. They breathe, they adapt, they argue with modernity, and they win, not because they refuse to engage, but because they are rooted so deeply in the specific geography and history of this place that no amount of satellite television or social media can dislodge them from the soil of daily life. The communities of the Strait have been absorbing the world for 3,000 years. The ancient Persians, the Arab sailors who, in the 7th and 8th centuries, created the greatest trading network the Indian Ocean had ever seen. The Swahili merchants of East Africa, the spice traders of India, the Portuguese empire builders who arrived with cannons in the 16th century, demanding, and briefly receiving, control of the passage. The British who came later stayed longer and left their mark in the form of colonial-era treaties whose consequences are still being debated today. Every wave of contact left something behind, a word absorbed into the local dialect, a spice introduced to the cooking, a musical rhythm carried across the ocean and grafted onto rhythms already ancient, a style of boat building borrowed, modified, and eventually made entirely local. The music of these communities, called Bandari on the Iranian coast, is among the most distinctive in the entire Persian-speaking world. Born at the intersection of Arab, African and Persian influences, it moves differently from the classical music of Tehran's concert halls. It is rhythmic where classical Persian music is melodic. It is participatory where formal music is performative. It belongs to the whole village, not to a trained specialist standing on a stage. The clothing traditions of this coast are equally layered with meaning. The women's embroidered dresses, heavy with geometric pattern in colours that seem, against the pale rock and sand of the landscape, almost impossibly vivid, are not merely decorative. Each village has its own pattern, its own palette. A woman's dress, to the eye trained to read it, tells you exactly where she is from, who her family is, what her status within the community is. It is a textile library, a wearable record of belonging, and the traditions that mark the great transitions of life, birth, coming of age, marriage, death, are observed here with a depth and specificity that speaks to a people who understand that the moments of passage deserve to be held carefully, marked clearly, witnessed by the full weight of community. A newborn child is welcomed with prayer recited directly into the ear, the first sound the child hears being the name of God. A young person's entry into adulthood is acknowledged with ceremony. A marriage, as mentioned, becomes a village-wide event that can last days. And when someone dies, the mourning is shared. It is distributed across the community so that no individual has to carry it alone. These are not incidental customs. They are the architecture of a society that has decided, long ago, and reaffirms the decision daily, that the human being is not meant to face the great events of life in isolation. The economy of the Strait of Hormuz communities is, in many ways, as it has always been. The sea gives, the sea takes, and the men who live here have organized their entire lives around the rhythm of its giving and its taking with a patience and precision that no amount of digital disruption has fundamentally altered. Fishing is not a profession here in the way a lawyer or an accountant practices a profession. It is closer to a vocation, a calling, a relationship between a family and the sea that is passed, like the mended nets and the boat-building knowledge, from father to son over generations so numerous that no one can remember when it began. The primary catches of this coast are kingfish, the prized hammer grouper, the small silver sardines that come in seasonal runs so dense they turn sections of the sea to silver, shrimp harvested from the shallower waters near the coastline, and the large prawns for which the Persian Gulf has been famous since antiquity. These are not luxury items here. They are the foundation of daily life. They are what is cooked for breakfast, what is traded at the market, what is dried and packed for the winter months when the weather makes fishing dangerous. Beyond fishing, the historic economic identity of this coast was built on trade. For millennia, the dhow traders of the Gulf crossed back and forth between the Arabian Peninsula, the Persian coast, the Indian subcontinent, and the shores of East Africa. They carried dates and dried fish outward. They returned with timber, cloth, rice, spices. They navigated without GPS, without satellite weather data, without radar, guided instead by the stars, by the seasonal monsoon winds they understood with uncanny precision, and by the accumulated navigational knowledge of generations. That direct, ocean-spanning trade has contracted in the modern era. The container ship has replaced the dhow on the long-haul routes. But along the coastal waters, between villages, between the Iranian and Omani sides, between the small communities of the Strait's many islands, the smaller boats still move constantly, ferrying goods, ferrying people, maintaining the informal economic connections that have linked these communities across the water for far longer than any of the nations that now claim the coastlines on either side. In recent decades, as the Gulf economies have boomed, particularly on the Omani side, where the development of Kasab as an administrative center has brought infrastructure, new economic opportunities have arrived. Government employment, tourism, hospitality, small shops catering to visitors drawn to the dramatic fjords of the Musandam. A modest but growing service economy that offers alternatives to the sea. But the fishing boats still leave before dawn. They have always left before dawn. and among the older men especially, there is no real question of whether the sea remains central to identity. It does. Economics change. The relationship with the water does not. If the soul of a culture is sometimes most clearly visible in its food, then the soul of the Strait of Hormuz is generous, complex, ancient, and surprisingly warm. The cuisine of this coastal world is not widely known outside the region. It does not appear on international restaurant menus in Paris or New York. It has not been romanticized and exported in the way that Lebanese or Moroccan food has been. But it deserves to be. The signature dish of this coast is mahi batamra, fish with dates. It is a combination that to the unacquainted ear sounds improbable. Sweet and savory in a way that northern food cultures are often slow to embrace. But in the mouth, it makes immediate, complete sense. The sweetness of the date, sun-dried, concentrated to an almost caramel intensity, balances the rich oiliness of the kingfish, cut through with the sour, citrus-adjacent sharpness of the dried lime. It is a dish that tastes like the geography that created it, like the meeting of date palm and open ocean, like the strait itself. There is also shorba, a rich fish broth, fragrant with turmeric and fenugreek, thickened with a little flour and served with large rounds of flatbread, baked in a clay oven called a tannour. The bread arrives at the table in billowing rounds, hot from the oven, slightly charred at the edges, the inside still steaming. It is not a side dish. It is the meal's architecture, the vessel by which everything else is carried to the mouth. Dates, in this region as throughout the entire Gulf, occupy a position in daily life that goes well beyond simple nutrition. They are the first food offered to a guest. They are the food with which the fast of Ramadan is broken each evening. They are carried by fishermen on long trips as a compact, extraordinary source of energy. They are pressed into a dark, rich syrup used in cooking and as a sweetener in tea. In a landscape where the date palm was historically one of the few trees that could thrive, dates became not merely food but medicine, currency, and spiritual symbol simultaneously. Beyond the meals themselves, the rhythm of daily life here moves at a pace that the modern productivity-obsessed world would struggle to recognize as functional. And yet it produces, demonstrably, a population of people who appear deeply, visibly, bodily content. The morning begins early, the call to prayer at dawn serving as an alarm clock more reliable than any electronic device. The serious work of fishing, of the market, of the tannour's first bread, is done in the relative cool of the early hours. By mid-morning, as the Gulf sun climbs toward its formidable vertical, the pace shifts. A midday rest is not a luxury, but a biological adaptation, a truce negotiated with a climate that does not negotiate. The afternoon, again in the cooler hours, sees a return to productivity, and the evening, that long, slow, luminous hour between the setting of the sun and the coming of full dark, belongs entirely to the social world, to the gathering, to the conversation, to the tea. There are places on this earth that exist at such an extreme of natural drama that description becomes almost comically inadequate. The Strait of Hormuz and its surrounding coastlines are among those places. On the surface, the geography seems hostile. The Iranian coastline approaching the strait is, for much of its length, a landscape of rock and sparse vegetation. Limestone mountains worn by millennia of heat and minimal rainfall into formations of extraordinary alien beauty. There is very little green, there is very little shade. The colors of the rock range from pale bone white to deep amber to a rich, almost improbable red. Hormuz Island, sitting directly in the mouth of the strait, is one of the most geologically extraordinary places on the planet. Its famous red beach, where iron oxide-rich soil meets the sea, appears so improbably vivid that first-time visitors often believe they are looking at a processed photograph. They are not. The red is real. The planet painted it there over millions of years, and it requires no filter. The sea itself, the water of the strait, is its own world of extraordinary complexity. The mixing of the Persian Gulf's warm, hypersaline water with the cooler, fresher water of the Gulf of Oman creates conditions of remarkable marine productivity. Coral reefs grow in the shallower zones, hosting thousands of species of fish, crustacean, and invertebrate. Whale sharks pass through the deeper channels on their seasonal migrations. Dolphins, bottlenose, spinner, and the common dolphin, are a year-round presence, and the local fishermen regard them not with the wonder of the tourist, but with the easy familiarity of neighbors. Inland from the strait, on the Iranian side, the landscape opens into something unexpected. Hidden valleys called tangs that cut through the limestone mountains and in the wet season carry actual flowing water. These seasonal rivers are not large by global standards, but in this context, in a landscape of such extreme aridity, they are transformative. The arrival of flowing water in a valley that has been bone dry for months is an event. Children appear at the banks. Women arrive with washing. The vegetation along the water's edge, rushes, tamarisks, the occasional wild fig, turns a green so vivid against the surrounding rock that it seems almost artificially placed. Migratory birds use the strait as a highway. Raptors, ospreys, eagles, harriers ride the thermal columns that rise off the heated rock to cross the narrow water with minimal effort. Flamingos congregate in the salt flats near the Gulf's edge. Wading birds probe the shallows at low tide in flocks that darken the mudflats like a shifting, animated cloud. The people who have lived in this landscape for generations do not use the word nature to describe it in the way an urban visitor might. Because for them, it is not nature in the sense of a category separate from human life. It is simply the world. The sea is not scenery. The birds are not a wildlife spectacle. The seasonal river is not a natural wonder. They are all simply the given conditions of existence, as familiar and as integrated into daily life as the walls of the house or the neighbor's faces. The Musandam Peninsula has no road that connects it to the rest of Oman. Not one. The mountains that form its spine are so extreme, so sheer, so absolute in their vertical ambition, that road building across them was judged, for most of the region's modern history, not worth the cost or the effort. This means the sea is not merely the emotional and economic heart of the community. It is the only road. The water taxi, called an abra in the broader Gulf tradition, though the local vessels here tend to be faster and more utilitarian, is the school bus, the ambulance, the commuter service, and the delivery truck, all in one. Children who attend secondary school in Kasab travel by water. Medical appointments require a boat journey. A family moving house loads everything onto a boat. Even the goats, occasionally, travel by water, bundled into the bow of a dhow with the resigned expression of commuters who have accepted their situation. On the Iranian side, transport has been somewhat more integrated into the mainland infrastructure. Roads reach most coastal communities, though the quality varies enormously depending on proximity to Bandar Abbas and the political priority given to development in that area. But even here, the boat remains central. The dhow and the small fishing boat are not nostalgic holdovers. They are the most efficient way to move between certain communities, and efficiency, as anyone who has tried to drive the coastal roads of Hormuz province at midday in August will tell you, is something this landscape demands. Modern technology has arrived with genuine visible effect. Mobile phones, particularly smartphones, are universal, even in communities where running water is intermittent and the electrical supply depends on a diesel generator shared between households. The phones connect the young to global social media. They carry video calls between fishermen at sea and families on shore. They stream music. They bring the world in through the screen. Satellite television arrived years ahead of smartphones, and the effect on cultural exposure was significant. The children of these communities have grown up simultaneously, knowing the traditional songs of their grandparents and the latest trends from social media. This is not experienced as contradiction here. It is simply the texture of contemporary life. The traditional coexists with the modern, Not because anyone has engineered that coexistence, but because the roots are deep enough to absorb new things without losing themselves. They have been born into a world of extraordinary complexity. These young men and women, the generation now growing up along the shores of the Strait of Hormuz, inhabit a position in history that has no real precedent. Behind them, thousands of years of tradition, community, and a way of life shaped by the sea and by the specific, hard-earned wisdom of people who knew how to survive in a challenging place. Ahead of them, a rapidly changing regional economy, the pressures of climate change on a marine environment their livelihoods depend on, the gravitational pull of the city, and the insistent algorithm-driven voice of a global culture that is constantly suggesting they ought to want something different. The question that hangs over the younger generation of the Strait communities is not unique to this place. It is a question being asked in fishing villages and mountain communities all over the world. But it has a particular weight here, in a place where the identity is so specifically tied to the water, to the boat, to the knowledge of the tides. Do you stay, or do you go? Education is valued enormously in these communities. Parents who themselves never attended secondary school are fiercely determined that their children will. The Saudi, Emirati, and Omani government investments in education infrastructure have reached even the remoter communities of the Musandam. Iranian governmental emphasis on literacy, which is genuinely high across Hormozgan province, means that the young people of the Iranian coast arrive in adulthood functionally educated and increasingly connected to opportunities beyond the village. Some go to university in Muscat, in Tehran, in Dubai, in cities whose energy and opportunity are genuinely exciting. And some of those return. Some do not. But the ones who return, and there are more of them than you might expect, tend to do so with something the village gave them and the city could not replace. A sense of exactly who they are. A sense of belonging to something with depth. Something real. A young woman interviewed in Kasab described it simply. She had studied in Muscat for 3 years. She had considered staying. But something in her, she said, was always pointing home. Not because the village was easier, it is not easier, but because here, she said, she knew what things meant. She knew why the sea mattered. She knew what the drum in the evening was saying. And she did not want to live in a world where she didn't know what things meant. There is an hour in the communities of the Strait that does not exist in cities. Cities do not have this hour. They are too continuous, too relentless, too convinced of their own momentum to allow it. But here, when the sun begins its final descent behind the mountains to the west, and the sea takes on the color of hammered gold, and the call to prayer rolls out across the water like something the landscape itself has been waiting to say. This is when the village becomes fully itself. The rhythm of the evening is as structured as the rhythm of the morning, but its structure is invisible. It is not a schedule but a pattern, repeated so many thousands of times that it has become indistinguishable from instinct. After the Maghrib prayer, the sunset prayer, families gather. The meal is prepared or already prepared. These coastal women have a genius for timing that is entirely unsung. The scent of the evening's food mingles with the salt air. Someone in a neighboring house is playing music. Not loudly, not performatively, just the way you might hum to yourself while doing something else. After the meal, the social world continues to open. In the cool of the evening, the village comes outside. This is not a modern concept of outdoor dining or al fresco living. It is the ancient, correct, biologically appropriate response to living in a place that is too hot to spend evenings inside. The outdoors reclaim people as the temperature becomes hospitable. Chairs appear. Conversation groups form and reform. The older men gather near the water, as they have always gathered near the water, and talk about things that matter. The sea, the community, the past, the future, the quality of this year's date harvest, the strange weather of last month, the things their fathers told them and what it means now. The Isha prayer, the night prayer, closes the day with the same formality with which the Fajr prayer opened it. And then the village settles. Lights go out. The sound of the sea, which has been the constant background to every moment of this day, comes forward as everything else retreats. In the deepest hours of the night, walking through a village on the strait, the only sound is water. It has always been only water. It would be dishonest, and it would be a disservice to the people of this place, to tell the story of the Strait of Hormuz communities purely as a pastoral idyll, as an uncomplicated paradise of community and tradition and beautiful light. It is all of those things, but it is also something else. It is a place under pressure. The Persian Gulf is one of the bodies of water most acutely stressed by the combined effects of climate change and human industry. It is already one of the world's warmest seas, and it is getting warmer. Coral bleaching events, caused by water temperatures that exceed what corals can survive, have become more frequent and more severe. The fish populations that the coastal communities depend on have shifted, some species moving to different ranges, others declining in numbers. Fishermen, who have worked the same waters for decades, report changes they find difficult to account for. The rhythms they learned from their fathers are no longer entirely reliable. The sea is behaving differently. Water scarcity, both fresh water for drinking and for agriculture, is an escalating challenge across the region. On the Iranian side, the management of water resources is a political as well as environmental question. On the Omani side, the geology of the Musandam provides some advantage. The mountains catch more rainfall than the flat coastal zones. But the communities still navigate a fundamental scarcity that the global conversation about climate change is making steadily more acute. The geopolitics of the strait itself casts a shadow over daily life that the communities who live here navigate with a fatalism born of long experience. They have watched empires come and go. They have seen the flags change on the coastlines on either side. They have lived through periods of tension that sent markets into chaos and brought military vessels into their waters. They know that the decisions which most directly affect their world are made in places very far from their village docks. The young people feel the pull of opportunity elsewhere and the attachment to home simultaneously, and the tension between those two forces is real and is not always resolved in the community's favor. Schools in the cities are better funded, hospitals are more accessible, career options are more diverse. The logic of departure has genuine weight, and no honest account of these communities should pretend otherwise. And yet, there is a question implicit in any honest story about a traditional community in the modern world that eventually demands to be asked directly. Why do people stay? Not because they can't leave. Many of them can. Some have left and returned. Some have family in Dubai, in Tehran, in Muscat, in London, and they know what those lives look like. They are not uninformed about alternatives. They are not staying by default. They are staying by choice. They stay because here they know who they are. In a world that offers infinite ways to construct an identity, through consumption, through aspiration, through the curated self-presentation of social media, there is a particular, underrated freedom in simply knowing, without effort or performance, who you are and where you belong. The people of the strait communities carry their identity the way the rock carries its color, not as something applied from outside, but as something intrinsic, something that does not require maintenance. They stay because the sea is not, for them, a view. It is a relationship, and relationships, real, long, tested ones, are not easily replaced. The fisherman who has been reading this particular stretch of water for 40 years has a connection to it that no amount of urban opportunity can replicate. He knows where the fish run in February. He knows the color the water turns before a certain kind of wind comes. He knows things about this place that took a lifetime to learn, and that are worth, in his accounting, considerably more than a larger apartment in a city where no one knows his name. They stay because the community holds them, because they know that if something goes wrong, a medical crisis, a failed season, a house that needs rebuilding, the people around them will respond. Not because it is required of them, not because they are paid to, but because it is the fabric of this world, and pulling on it holds everything together. And they stay, perhaps most deeply, because they have understood something that is genuinely difficult to understand from outside the experience of a place like this, that the good life is not primarily a function of the quantity of available choices. It is a function of the depth of available meaning. And meaning, the sense that your life is connected to something real, something larger than the individual, something that was here before you and will continue after, is abundant here. It comes with the territory. It comes with the sea. "21 miles. The world looks at this narrow corridor of water and sees a choke point, a strategic imperative, a number on a spreadsheet. 20% of global oil, every day, flowing silently through this ancient gap between two ancient lands. And the world is not wrong to notice. The Strait of Hormuz matters in ways that are vast, measurable, and geopolitically irreducible. What happens in these waters has consequences that ripple to every petrol station, every factory floor, every household that depends on the global economy's continuous, taken-for-granted flow of energy. But the world is also looking at the wrong thing. Or rather, it is looking at only one thing when there are many things to see. Because in the villages and the fishing harbours, on the rocky islands and in the dramatic fjords, in the kitchens where saffron rice is being perfumed with dried lime, and in the courtyards where 3 generations are drinking tea in the evening light, there is something happening that the geopolitical briefings do not capture. There is a life being lived. A thoroughly human, deeply rooted, remarkably resilient life in one of the most consequential corridors on the planet. A life that knows, without needing to argue the point, that the things which matter most are not strategic. They are not measurable in barrels or in shipping lane clearances. They are a child's bare feet in the red sand, the weight of a net in salt water at dawn, the first hot glass of tea offered to a guest who arrives without warning at an open door, the sound of a drum in the evening, the particular way this piece of sea turns gold at the hour when the day makes its peace with the night. The Strait of Hormuz will continue to matter to the world for reasons the world thoroughly understands. But it has always mattered to the people who live here for reasons that have nothing to do with oil, for reasons that have to do with home,